Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Kata Chronicles. Okay guys, welcome back to another episode of the Kata Chronicles. Today's guest is someone I've actually wanted to speak to for a very long time. Good friend of mine, provided artwork for two of my bands, although one never ended up getting published, unfortunately. He's also produced loads of artwork you've probably seen online with Instagram, doing various Marvel, Star Wars characters, DC characters, and most recently, probably well known for his famous coronavirus piece with a massive version of the virus being flipped off by a nurse and the variations of that. So welcome, Mr. MJ Hiblen. How are you doing, sir?
Hello. I'm good, sir. Thank you.
So,
I'm very good.
This is very strange for me because although we've known each other for probably over a decade,
Yeah.
it's purely online.
Yeah. It's one of those weird relationships, isn't it, that you have
One of the only times I can think of social media actually doing what it was originally intended to do.
Yes, absolutely. Apart from giving you loads of strange followers and people who just transiently part of your digital life.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, totally.
Because I remember you sort of added me as a friend on Facebook, and this must have been about 2007, 2008.
Yeah.
And I messaged you because I was like, hi, who are you? Because at that point, I was barely getting my head around what Facebook was.
Yeah, I was kind of...
And you were just like, oh, I'm just collecting interesting people. And you looked like you had some stuff on your profile that was interesting. It was around the time I'd started picking up on action figures and comics and stuff like that again.
Yeah.
And I remember the next time we really spoke was when you messaged me about the knees on a particular DC character being upside down on the figure.
Yes.
And explained to me how to
dip
it into hot water to like release the plastic and flip it around and all the rest of it.
I'm helpful like that.
Yeah, because I was just like, I didn't even notice they were upside down because the joint worked. It stood up. So I was just like, okay.
It's one of those anal action figure collecting niggles that you get, with that.
Yeah. Which I've got now, but I never used to have then because I just got into it. So I was just kind of like them sort of, it was the new 52 era of DC.
Yeah.
And they started doing the new line and they'd just done the Justice League. And I think it was when they later did the, what are they called? The sort of villainous version of Justice League. Crime Syndicate.
That's it. Yeah. Well, the really cool Owlman Batman kind of thing.
Yeah. And it was the, I believe it was either the Owlman or the Ultraman who had upside down kneecaps.
Yeah.
And you was like, yeah, you need to do this. And I was like, oh shit, I didn't even realize. That was kind of like where our communication started. And then I started seeing all your crazy artwork at the time, which was quite different to what you do now.
Yeah.
Because I remember the Mr. Men series you did.
Oh, yeah. Well, I did that. That was a commission.
Oh, was that a commission? Because there was loads of them.
Yeah, that was a commission from a guy that, really nice guy. Again, another kind of guy I'm friends with who I met on Facebook.
Yeah.
And yeah, he sort of commissioned me for a little collection. And being an English guy, he wanted something very English and he wanted all the Mr. Men, but he had a very set idea of all these alternative adult Mr. Men. I think the idea has been done quite a few times, but I don't think it's like the whole series has been done.
No.
I think I did the whole series. I think that was one of my first sort of big commissions while I was still teaching, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so, I remember seeing it and being like, wow, these are really mad. Because previous to that, I think I'd seen some of the sort of more vampiric gothic type style you'd been doing.
Yeah, well, it all started, but I used to work for Facebook doing the Vampires and Werewolves app thing, the avatars.
Okay.
App.
Yeah.
And that was what, I was struggling financially, looking after myself and had my daughter part-time and stuff.
Yeah.
And that came along just at the right time. But at the time as well, I was doing everything I did was very horror orientated. Yeah. You could have almost typecast me in that kind of genre.
It felt like you was going to get typecast in that kind of genre for a while, because that was literally like, I guess you were taking commissions as well, which would have been based on what they were seeing. So you got very heavily into doing that kind of thing. I think the next big change I saw was when you started doing the Marvel stuff.
Yeah, I think. Well, prior to that, I think I got a couple of commissions, strangely, to do a couple of children's books,
Okay, yeah.
which were like helping kids understand what bullying was and how you don't how you could deal with it. You don't put up with it, stuff like that. But
Yeah.
through sort of different weird ways of using the alphabet and illustration and stuff like that. I did that, which is totally different to what I normally do. And yeah, it was difficult because I would put up a load of horror artwork, and people would sort of then get in touch with me saying, "Oh, I like your artwork, but we want you to do a children's friendly thing." I'll go, okay, so I'll put up a load of children's artwork, and then somebody said, "I like your artwork, but we want something a bit more edgy." So I could never please everyone.
Yeah.
It was yeah.
I mean, that's the thing with art in general, though. You're never going to please everyone.
No.
And obviously, your job at the time was kind of you doing like commission work, so you was kind of adjusting what you was doing, I guess, to what the commission was.
Yeah, I mean, it was at the time. It was. I mean, as much as I do my art, I've got to be creative, or I'll go insane. It was for money. You know, it was to make a business, to make a profit out of it, to make money, to pay the bills. So yeah, it was the case of I would have pretty much done anything that anybody would have, paid me for. So yeah,
because that art wasn't done digitally in the way that you do it now, was it?
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. I think
it's still done with your iPad and like you drawing with your finger on your iPad.
Yeah,
wow.
Yeah. I think. Well, when I probably first met you, I was just. I mean, I was still kind of a physical artist, sort of painting acrylics on board and stuff like that. But I was also pushing it a bit with Photoshop.
Okay.
And I hated Photoshop because everything you did, you could make things look good, but you could see it was false. You could see it was a bit stifled.
Yeah.
And I wanted something that brought all the two together. And I think when I first met you, it was around about the time I'd started dabbling in tablets and drawing with your finger and that kind of stuff around about then. But yeah, most of this, I'd say 99.9% of my stuff you see is that's on an iPad with my finger.
Yeah, and it's absolutely nuts. I remember when I showed the proven artwork that you did when I was still doing that band to the guys, and they were like, "Oh, wow, this is incredible." I was like, "Yeah, it's a dude with his finger on an iPad." And I just remember Lewis looking at me like, "Fuck off. There's no fucking way." And I was just like, "No, for real, this is how he does it." And then I think you had the YouTube video up by that point of you doing some sketches.
Oh yeah, I did. Well, I did because a lot of people were. Well, a lot of people write to me. Yeah, no, yeah. Oh, that was brilliant. I still got that one up. There's like a showcase for the darker tracks and stuff. But yeah, no, a lot of people didn't believe the way I would do it, that I would professionally do it, but use my fingers. So I had to do those, sort of upload those videos just to say, well, this is what I do and this is me and how I work. Because I don't really believe in the pencils and the styluses and stuff. It feels a bit weird. I feel like I should be painting with acrylics if
you're going to use that, you may as well have a board, paint, and
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The only thing is that if I get hold of a pen or a pencil now, I look like a complete idiot. I don't know what to do with it. It's like because I don't use it to write, because I'm typing on a keyboard or on a virtual keyboard or something and draw with my finger. So I get a pen, forget how to hold it. It's ridiculous. It's like I'm just like a 3-year-old kid trying to draw with a crayon. It's mad.
After all these years and years, I mean, obviously we're both from a non-digital age originally.
Yeah.
And now that you've done this for so long, doing it this way, you don't need that tool anymore, and you can just do it with your hand straight onto the tablet.
Yeah, it doesn't take a lot of practice. I think it's muscle memory.
Yeah,
I think that's all it is. I think it's just and there's a lot of programs out there that, I mean, my idea was to be as self-sufficient as I could be. I mean, I like the idea of being able to draw anywhere and take your art wherever, and that it had zero kind of expense. So I didn't have to speculate to accumulate kind of thing. I didn't need to go out and buy board paints, stuff like that. I needed space. I didn't need that. I could just do it anywhere. And it was that kind of level of independence
Yeah.
I liked a lot, and it also helped me with my imagination. So when I get an idea, it was really easy to do it.
Yeah, because it's instant. You've got the tablet on you. You sit down wherever you're at and just go, I've got an idea. Bap, bap, bap,
Yeah,
bap, bap. And
yeah,
because, I mean, the thing is, because you're an artist, you can do that. You know, for me, when I've got an idea, it has to be written because I can't draw for shit.
yeah,
So it has to become a written idea, which I can then pass on to someone like yourself. Be like, can you draw something that looks like that idea for me?
yeah,
Which is obviously the commission work I did with you for the clowns that we've been doing.
yeah. I've been liking them. I still owe you one as well.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Because you sent me the pre sketches of it.
yeah. Well, my whole concept of working and hoovering up commissions went mad when the frontline thing came out,
Yeah.
the virusy thing, and I had to get on that. I pretty much had to create a book within a month, so that was
Well,
mad.
I remember the first wave of big commissions you got came just around after the start of you started doing loads of Marvel stuff as the MCU kicked off.
Yeah,
And I remember you getting really busy around then because you did like Deadpool and Thor and things like that, and they started getting retweeted by the actors playing the parts.
yeah, yeah, yeah. They got quite.
That got quite big, and then you got a lot
Yeah,
of work off the back of that. And I remember you doing. There was a project where you like a kid would send you a drawing and you'd upscale it, like you because you were
yeah.
doing it with your own child, weren't you? She was drawing stuff,
I was
and then you would
also.
upscale it into something that you would draw, sort of thing. And you started doing that as a service for other people.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean that started kind of really at my workplace that I used to work for with
Yeah,
some of the students I used to work with, and that was quite good. It was quite interesting. It was a nice little bit of collaboration stuff. And I mean, it's not a new idea. That's been going for quite a few years.
yeah,
Various other artists and stuff. But yeah, no, that was good. So I sort of offering it up, and I did a few. I didn't do a lot, but I did a few. But I really enjoyed doing them. I mean, I did them for very little. I did them for like 20 quid a go. You know, I didn't
yeah,
charge people much at all. But yeah, no, I remember that. I loved that one.
yeah. It's funny to see like all the different little stages as you go along. In a few years that I have known you, it's kind of like he did this bit and he did that. It's funny to see the little collections that you've put together over them years, sort of thing,
Yeah,
and seeing, especially to see the change in the styles as well.
yeah. Well, the style I always wanted to do was the style I do the most of now, which is the flat, detailed comic book stuff.
Yeah,
Um, because that's the one that I can do. In my opinion, I can do the best. I can get people's ideas better using that style. But that took a bit of a while to perfect, and I've kind of slowly kind of faded out my old really detailed style, which I still do occasionally for like comic book covers or whatever. But it's more now just the flat sort of stuff.
yeah.
Yeah, and I also really enjoy it as well. That kind of artwork. I don't have to think about it too much.
I suppose if it comes natural to you, it's just
Yeah,
like you say, it's muscle memory.
yeah, yeah, totally.
And to be fair, I mean, we were talking about this with the band the other day. I think we've had more comments about our artwork than we have about our music, which is quite
Yeah,
hilarious.
well, you guys have had some good, strong ideas. You know, I mean, I do the artwork, but it's at the end of the day, it's like I'm just the guy who glues the model together. You're the guys who make it. So
You say that.
yeah,
I mean, to be fair, we wouldn't have had a fucking clue what we were doing. We just went through ideas like, oh no, we want to put everyone in suits and they look like assassins. Fucking, that's it. That's the idea. That's as basic as it gets.
yeah, no, but I get that a lot. that's that's I mean, because I mean, if people could do it themselves, they wouldn't commission you. But it's quite nice when you get these brilliant personal commissions for people sometimes, where you do stuff that somebody gives you an idea and you just hit the nail on the head for them.
Yeah.
And they're really quite enthusiastic about that. I mean, it can go the other way, and you can end up having to do a lot of work and have to have a cut-off point because the person's just not putting over what they're after.
Yeah. And I mean, I think the way I work with you is normally we do like this, send me a black and white sketch of
Yeah.
just body positioning and that first. And I'll just be like, yep, that's perfect. Or maybe shift this that way, shift that way.
Yeah.
And when it comes back, the next thing I see is the completed artwork. And it's pretty much spot on to what was in my head.
Yeah. I mean, that's the way I do it for everyone.
Yeah.
It's a simple, thing. I'll keep doing the black and white line sketch, which will be simple.
Yeah.
And I'll do that not an infinite amount of times, but enough times where I know that we got the idea, we've got it. And then, I mean, color can always be tweaked at a later date, and then I can sort of go for it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the simple process I use for everybody, really.
Yeah. Because, like, I
Yeah.
mean, you think using that process, they'd get to what they wanted pretty quick.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a funny one. I mean, usually they do. I think sometimes people get a little bit confused because technically I create digital art, but
Yeah.
the digital art is created freehand with my finger. So where people think that you're going to have a lot of layers and all these different things you can move around because it's a digital piece of art. I haven't got, because the way I kind of approach it, I draw it is more like somebody would approach it using a piece of paper and a pen. So so sometimes, and then you get some really weird things people ask. Like I had a guy who wanted me to do a personal commission for him, which was a Thor Red Hulk sort of battle scene thing.
Yeah.
And I did it. Did the sketch. He loved it. Thought it was brilliant. Did the whole thing. Finished the work. Sent it to him. And he said, "Yeah, can you just turn Thor around a bit?" And I'm like, well, "No, not really." And he's like, "Well, why not?" And I said, "Well, it's 2D. It's not." And I think in his head, because people sometimes think it's digital,
they think of it like Photoshop, because Photoshop obviously is layer upon layer upon layer. And if there's something wrong with one layer, you just adjust that layer without everything else being moved.
Yeah, totally. Or a 3D object, like you get a lot of 3D art these days.
Yeah.
And it's, yes, they think, well, can you just move it around? And I mean, if you did, you could. But yeah, I mean, it's hard to explain to somebody that like it's a total redraw.
Yeah.
So that can be a bit of a tricky one.
Have you ever considered going like using what you do, the way you do it, but then doing each thing in layers?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I know. I do layers when I need to, and and obviously layers play a big part of the process of what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But very rarely will I get a piece of work out to somebody that's in layers. I don't even think the software that I use can do that. I mean, the software I use is inexpensive. I mean, everything I do, I try and do on a budget.
Yeah.
So I make sure that if I can use the cheapest iPad you can get, that I've got access to the cheapest bit of software, so
because I remember when one of the first things you told me was the piece of software you was using, and I could get it on my phone.
Yeah.
And I got it, and again, like I say, I'm no good at art, but by playing around with it, I can now look at your art and see how it's done. I can see like the strokes behind it, be like, now I get it. I can see what he's done there. I understand the sort of behind the scenes of it, which is quite fun for me, because that's the kind of, like, I'd rather watch the making of a film than the film itself a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So that was quite interesting.
Yeah, no, it's good. I mean, like I say, I mean, I've been going slightly off on tangent. I always believe that art should be accessible to everyone.
Yeah.
Whatever, whatever and stuff like that. And having stuff like that and buying cheap apps. I mean, the first app I did a lot of my artwork and drawing on, I think I did all those Mr. Men you talked about. I did it on an app that was 49 pence on the App Store.
I think that was the one you told me to have a look at.
Yeah, it was quite an old one. It was called Sketch Time. And
that's it.
It was by a young Danish guy, I think, who'd just done it as like a little bedroom project and released it on the iPad. And it was a nice little program, really simple, but it was a nice little drawing program. It just felt nice.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean that's not supported now by Apple anymore, unfortunately.
No, I found that out because when I went to update one of mine, it was like, no, this is dead. It doesn't work anymore. Yeah.
Well, it's this constant thing about updating for updating's sake these days, which unfortunately renders a lot of software that people use just unusable. And I mean, it's not a great situation.
So what are you using at the moment? What's the software you use now?
Software I use now is Sketchbook Pro, which I think I brought it a long time ago and used to be able to buy it for about £3.50.
Wow.
But I think now it's gone over. I think it's free now.
Okay. Wow. Even better.
Yes, but I think you can subscribe to it or something.
Okay.
And you can upload work in sort of 4K.
Okay.
Yes, it's a brilliant little program, and it's you got enough options there to do anything, I think, or make, or bend it to your will, so to speak.
Yeah, and
So yeah,
if you understand the program, you can pretty much do what you want with it.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
that's
they
the
are
kind of thing you want as well.
Yeah, no, totally.
So for you, this is
Yeah.
when did you first decide? Like, was there an artist or something you saw in comic books that you decided got you into doing this kind of thing? Like, what was it that made you go, yeah, I'm going to start drawing in general?
Right. In general, I can't remember. I think I was about 3.
Wow.
I
Because
think it was about 3.
about 3, 4 years old, I knew I couldn't draw.
Yeah. About 3 or 4 years old, I knew I shouldn't, because what I was doing was I was getting biros, and my mum had a great collection of history books. Yeah, and it was really lovely white insides on the front covers. And I used to draw, if there was like a little space of white paper,
Yeah.
I would draw I draw these big chunky robots on it when I was a little kid.
Yeah.
Or some kind of weird looking jellified monsters fighting these big robots. And that's the first things I ever remember drawing as a kid. And then my dad, bless him, he was a wood machinist. Yeah. And he had a fret saw thing out in the shed. And I used to draw like on a bit of wood. I used to think bit of wood. I used to draw like Daleks and Doctor Who characters. And my dad used to cut them out for me on a bit of wood.
Oh, nice.
And that was kind of like, that's my origin story.
Yeah.
Of drawing, I reckon.
But it was, again, because it was encouraged by your dad, and he then went and cut the stuff out and essentially gave you a wooden toy from what you'd drawn.
Yeah, totally.
That's definitely going to sort of encourage you to be like, right, I can do this, and I'm going to carry on drawing and stuff like that.
Well, I never had. The only time I one of the biggest things about drawing is I always believe in creating stuff.
Yeah,
it's 80% confidence, and it's 20% skill.
Yeah.
I always really, really believe that, because I've known people who've been really good artists, like really talented, who do some fantastic things, but all you ever hear them say is like, oh, do you think it's any good? I'm not too sure. Do you think I should keep working on it? And it's a massive amount of self-doubt.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've seen people who are awful, and they're so full of themselves, they get places. It's you've got to have confidence in what you do.
Rob Liefeld.
Yeah.
Rob Liefeld has massive confidence. I mean, the guy was the guy who created Image. If it wasn't for his conversations with the others, Image Comics wouldn't have happened.
No, I mean, he's the guy who created Deadpool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
can't draw feet for shit.
It's not the feet I worry about, to be brutally honest. I mean, he likes to draw women with enormous boobs and literally no room for a digestive system.
I mean, he liked to draw Captain America with enormous boobs at one point.
I remember this. I've seen that picture. Yeah,
it's incredible.
Captain America with a 75-inch chest. So that was ridiculous. Yeah, he's a funny chap. Yeah, he's very ego. He's all ego, that man.
But from what I've heard about him from people that have met him at cons and that, he's actually really nice and friendly.
Yeah.
But he's like, he's very confident on what he can do, even though he's not actually that great at it.
Yeah, no, I think he touched a nerve, didn't he, in the 90s, with that style of artwork, which I still have a bit of a thing for, when everybody's just covered in pouches.
Well, this is it. I mean, I come into comics in the 90s.
Yeah,
like I wasn't collecting comics in the 80s when I was I was, but not superhero comics in a sense. I had Transformers was my big thing, because as a kid I was massively into big robots as well.
Yeah.
And that Transformers is the epitome of big robot fucking stuff, at least in the West. And then it was because that was released by Marvel Comics UK over here.
I think so, yeah.
And it was Simon Furman was writing it. And then he started to do these other little weird Marvel UK comics, such as Death's Head and Dragon's Claws.
Yeah.
And we started to get a few reprints of The Punisher as well through Marvel UK. So I was collecting all of them, but Punisher's kind of a superhero, I guess, but not really.
Yeah, he's a bit Batman, isn't he? He's a bit kind of sheer will.
Yeah.
See, the thing is with me in comics, when I tell people this, I mean, I'm not, it sounds really odd. I'm not really into comics. I like comics, but I don't know a massive amount about them.
Yeah.
And I mean, my introduction to comics when I was a kid was my dad buying me on a Sunday morning, Spider-Man and
Yeah.
Planet of the Apes were the
Oh,
two
right. Yeah.
comics my dad used to buy me. And yeah, I've only recently started buying certain Batman graphic novels again.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I researched the characters and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm not I'm not what you call a comic book geek
Yeah.
in that sense of the word. I'm not. Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, like I say, my introduction to comics was really the 90s, sort
yeah,
of the X-Men, the 90s X-Men that Jim Lee drew.
yeah. I remember I had a friend who collected those, and I did read a few of those in the 90s.
Well,
Yeah, they were really
I've
good.
got a signed copy of issue 1 um, of that signed by Jim Lee.
Yeah,
And I've got a few more of the later issues as it goes on, because I think he only ended up drawing 3 or 4 issues of that, and then he fucked off.
yeah,
Because that, again, that's that start of that Image Comics thing, but it was all the guys from Marvel that were doing all the mutant books,
yeah,
apart from Todd McFarlane, who was working Spider-Man at the time.
yeah. See, Tom McFarlane, funny character. I never know what to think of. I do love his artwork. You can't not love his artwork. I think he epitomizes the best part of the 90s comic book scene.
I love his enthusiasm for it.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean,
he genuinely loves it.
I mean, I know him. See, I know Tom McFarlane more for his action figures,
Yeah.
which I used to hate because they looked so good, but yet they'd have 3 points of articulation.
Yeah, the old Spawn stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and they'd break really quickly. And now the guy's just exploded with the DC multiverse stuff, and 99% of it is amazing.
Yeah, 99% of it is also Batman, which is what most people are complaining about. It seems, which I find funny, because like it's obviously the biggest selling character that the DC have.
I mean, you're collecting those now, aren't you?
Yeah, they're currently boxed up. But yeah,
I mean, you're getting those now, aren't you? Though.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've started buying those. They're awesome. And it's the first time I ever heard of like Death Metal Batman.
Okay. Yeah, don't read the comic.
Is it bad?
It's a bit of a mess.
Yeah, it's every little thing I found out about it. It seemed quite disjointed and stuff.
So Dark Knight's Metal was okay, which is the first part of it, and then this year they did Death Metal, or last year they did Death Metal.
Yeah,
which is, it's so meta that it just gets, it's meta, but not in the good Grant Morrison way.
Yeah.
So it just becomes a bit messy. And the thing is, Scott Snyder's one of these writers who has great ideas, but somehow doesn't quite execute perfectly.
Yeah.
Like, you can see the idea, then you're like, that's a fucking really good idea. And I've heard him being interviewed, and he's talking about the idea behind the storyline. And I'm like, if the execution had been good as the idea, you'd be one of the best writers to have ever done in the fucking genre by far.
Yeah.
But somehow the execution, for me personally, and I'm sure there are people that disagree with me, the execution of them stories isn't quite there.
No, I mean, the one I bought recently, Last Night on Earth, which right, yeah. I really liked. I mean, again, like you say, it was very meta and it was very disjointed. But yeah, I thought I liked this because I'm a big fan. I mean, you know, it's going to be everywhere soon. It's the whole kind of multiversey, you know, lots of interpretation. I mean, Marvel, the MCU seem to have embraced it and gone, yeah, we're not frightened of the multiverse. Let's go for it. Whereas DC, you know, the whole kind of Warner Brothers situation, well, we're not too sure about it. And I think, well, just say everything's a multiverse. You know, Joaquin Phoenix's Joker, Justice League, the whole, just multiverse it. Everybody will love it. But they seem really kind of apprehensive to.
There's a big thing where the studios have always done this from they downplay in their heads the intelligence of their audience.
Yeah.
They kind of think that we're all morons. And that has led, in my way of thinking, a lot of the downfall of cinema, really, because you just get a lot of the same shit churned out for years.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I know the 50s had the same problem with the Westerns, you know. You could look through 50s cinema, there's a dozen westerns every single year.
Yeah.
So I get it. It's how Hollywood's always kind of worked. In the 30s, Universal in their horror films, a constant churn of Universal monsters.
Yeah. Well, it's what sticks, isn't it? It's money. If it's making the money,
Then you
that's
do
where
it.
the money's going to go. I loving the simplicity of superheroes and superhero films. I love this whole MCU switch to the Disney Channel and series and stuff.
Yeah.
I am quite digging this. I'm enjoying the Winter Soldier and looking forward to Loki and stuff, but it's almost starting to saturate me now. That there's a bit too much.
Yeah. I mean, it was getting to me when I think there was 1 year where Marvel released 2 to 3 films a year every year. And I'm just like, problem with that is it no longer feels like an event.
No.
Like it doesn't. Yeah. You're not when you did the first Avengers film, like Avengers 1, there'd been 5 films leading up to it, and then you do the first Avengers film in 2012, and it felt like a genuine event.
Yeah.
But now you're churning out like 3 or 4 films every year, and then we're getting an Avengers film. But I've seen so much Marvel stuff by that point that the Avengers film is just kind of like, it's another Marvel film.
Yeah.
And certainly by the time we got to Endgame.
Yeah, but it gets to a point where there's so many characters now in one film that if there's not like 10 characters in it, like, well, where's everybody else?
Yeah.
It's difficult to focus on one particular thing. And also talking to a couple of people I know who like the films but don't invest in them that heavily. Things like WandaVision, they're like totally confused about it. They're like, why am I watching these people doing this?
Yeah.
Because
it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's like that. And almost it starts to become like some kind of fantastical EastEnders where you're like, the bloody hell is that? Who's that going over there? And why is he shouting at her? What's that over there?
I think the problem you've got, and this is the problem that comic books have, or had at one point before they started rebooting every couple of years, is that it becomes difficult for new viewers to come in.
Yeah.
If you've got a kid who's only like 5 or 6 years old now and hasn't seen the 20 odd films leading up to where we're at now, when that Black Widow film drops, he's not really going to have an understanding of what's going on because there's 20 odd films prior to watch it.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, in this day and age, you can get a kid to sit down and watch an action film a night quite easily and get through the 21 films because they're all on streaming services and available to virtually everyone anywhere.
Yeah.
So it's possible to catch them up. But it's like, it doesn't give you an entry point.
No. But it's a big ask. I was told to watch Game of Thrones for a very long time and I didn't.
Yeah.
And then because I work at home and I have the mutant ability for some reason to multitask when I'm drawing, so I can actually watch a film while I'm drawing or something. I watched the whole of Game of Thrones in a week.
Jesus.
And it was hard going, but I loved it. But sometimes it's just where can you get the time? I work from wherever I want to work from. So
yeah,
it's like, I can do that. But where do you get time to watch all this stuff?
And that's it. It's just like, if you've got a day-to-day job, you might get an episode in the evening before you crash out to get ready for work in the morning, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So, obviously, with something like Game of Thrones, it was aired weekly, 1 episode every week, for 7 years.
Yeah.
Obviously, not 7 years. There's like 10 episodes a season or whatever it is. So, each year you'd come around to it, you'd watch it, fine, put it away, job done. But now it seems like, we're in this era now of like binge watching stuff. So they drop the whole season in one go.
Yeah.
And people will try to find a time over a weekend or something to see it, I guess.
Yeah. It's nice. It's good to, I was saying to my partner the other day, I miss looking forward to things. Like from when I was a kid. I remember the only thing that was even mildly fantastical that was on the television was Star Trek Next Generation on a Wednesday evening at 6 o'clock,
Yeah.
and the X Files on a Tuesday night. And
Yeah.
you'd sort of, oh, what are you doing tomorrow night? Oh, watch the X Files.
Yeah.
It's on tomorrow, and now that's kind of all gone. I mean, you do kind of get it spoon fed a little bit, like particularly with the Mandalorian, things like that, where and the Disney stuff. But I do miss getting a cup of tea and making sure you sat down to watch something at 9 o'clock. I kind of
Yeah.
miss those times.
It's one of them. It's a weird thing because I'm kind of both ways on that. It's like I do miss the idea of being like, right, there's a set time to watch this. It kind of
Yeah,
schedules your watching. It kind of goes, well, that's what you're doing for that hour.
yeah,
X Files is on at 9 o'clock. You're sitting down and watching that. But I do like the convenience of being able to watch it anywhere, anytime, sort of to suit my lifestyle.
yeah. I mean, that is its massive plus, and obviously the massive amount of choice.
Yes.
But yeah, I don't know. I think sometimes I do miss that kind of like less is more sort of thing, because we all get the overwhelming Netflix moment where we're sitting there and we're going to watch something, and then we end up watching the menu screen of Netflix for 3 hours trying to find something that just has to suit our mood down to the ground.
Yeah.
And we end up wasting all that time. It's mental.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really use Netflix that much, even though I've got it and it's the only streaming service I do have.
Yeah,
I don't actually. I watch bits of stand-up comedy on there when there's someone I like has released a special,
yeah,
and anything they've got that's theirs that they've made that's something I enjoy. So, for example, they've got the rights to Ghost in the Shell,
yeah,
which is one of my favorite anime of all time. So they're doing the sequel series to Standalone Complex. And when that dropped the other year, I was like, well, I'll watch that regardless of where it is because it's Ghost in the Shell.
yeah.
And while I have the rights to that, then that's why I'll keep my Netflix subscription. But over time, I'm like, I mean, I don't watch much TV at all, full stop.
Yeah,
I don't have Disney Plus because I have sort of political views against Disney where I'm like, no, fuck them as a company, not giving them any money.
yeah,
So I will find other ways of watching Winter Soldier and WandaVision and Loki when it eventually drops. But I find myself still now less and less Netflix. There's not much on there that I'm actually that interested in.
yeah. I mean, this happened to me the other day of going on there and seeing a lot of stuff, but just not it not enthralling me at all. It could be because there's so much of it.
Yeah,
I'm not too sure. It kind of like you feel like you're gorging on entertainment. I sort of feel the same way quite a lot these days about gaming. I mean, I've more and more recently sort of crept back into, when I've had the chance to do a bit of gaming, is retro gaming a lot.
I just bought a retro pie.
Oh, I see what I've just brought. The other day I brought an RG3501P,
Oh Jesus!
which is it's a cheap little Chinese handheld.
Yeah, I think my friend's got something similar.
Yeah, and just try. I spent nearly 5 hours trying to get Marvel versus Capcom 2 to work on the Dreamcast. I still can't get it to work. But I tell you something, it does Street Fighter right up to Street Fighter Third Strike perfectly.
Yeah, that's
So,
because on the retro pie, it's got like you can add different emulators to it.
yeah, I've heard the Retro Pie is the best one. That was the one they literally, wasn't it, a couple of years ago, they gave away in a magazine free.
Yeah, because it's just a chip.
Yeah,
I went onto one of the websites that sells. I think I went to a place called the Pie Hut,
yeah.
and I
I
bought.
love all this. The pudding names.
Yeah,
I don't know what. So somebody sit there and go, "Yeah, we're going to make a really good sort of CPU board. Let's name it after a load of puddings."
yeah, basically.
Not work.
But so I went onto the website and I bought one of the starter packs. So it came with controllers. It came with a
Yeah,
case to put the chipset in.
I've seen this. I saw this on the same website. I brought my other one.
Yeah,
The
so I
other day.
just
It's like a little box, isn't it? Like a little square box.
yeah, mine's a little black square box.
That's it.
I think it cost me like 120 quid for the whole setup because
Yeah,
I got the 8 gig of RAM in there. I was just like, as new emulators come available for the more high end machines or the more recent machines, I want the RAM to be able to power that.
yeah,
So I just get the high end one, put it all together, had a couple of trial and errors getting it to sit together because the chipset, the hole in the chip wouldn't line up with the hole in the box to screw it together. I was like, for fuck's sake. But I finally got that together.
Yeah.
Put an SD card in, got about 600 old retro arcade games. Third Strike runs amazingly on it. I've got the. My thing was this: I wanted to play a lot of the old run and gun games.
Yeah. You mean like
So,
Contra,
Metal Slug, stuff like that.
Oh, I
Because
love Metal Slug. Yeah.
Metal Slug, I had. I just bought a collection for like $3.49 on the PS4.
Yeah.
But it doesn't emulate very well. Like if you push, as you push the fire button, it's about a second between you hitting the button and the bullet coming out.
Yeah. I'll tell you something interesting. That because I love Metal Slug, and I had my first introduction to arcade emulators.
Yeah.
Was Metal Slug, but they brought out a version for the was it the PSP? I used to have a long time. It was a Metal Slug anthology.
Yeah, that's what it is. It was on the PS2, and they've basically taken that and put it onto the PS4.
Yeah,
and I think
probably the same one.
They probably ported it onto the PSP, but there's
Yeah.
a massive input delay.
Yeah, I had it.
The game with Metal Slug is not good.
No, absolutely not. Because I mean, this new little retro thing I got. I mean, it's got a built-in it's Emulec or something. I don't know what it is, but it's got a built-in Neo Geo arcade emulator. That's got all the Metal Slugs on it, and they're like they're perfect. They're really good.
Yeah.
So this thing you play on, I take it you plug it into a monitor or a TV.
Yeah. And mine came with like fake Super NES controllers.
Oh yeah, I've seen those.
However, I've plugged my PS4 controller into it, and it works fine.
Oh, excellent.
And so I was just like, well, I'll stick that in there because then I haven't got to fuck around with extra controllers. I'll just use this.
Yeah.
You know, it works. But I'm so used to a PS4 controller now from playing Street Fighter 5 all the time.
Yeah.
It just feels comfortable in my hand. It's like I want a PlayStation controller.
Yeah, I mean, it's good that you have. It's good that you can. Yes, you can get something that's universal for everything. You know, like you can plug your pad in. You can do. Oh, it's a brilliant idea. But I also think like retro gaming is like, because I'm getting a little bit tired of things like. I mean, how advanced do you want the graphics? How hyper real do you need them to be? I mean, we all like good graphics, but good graphics come from artistic stuff, not being able to see. You know, in a wrestling game, you can see the sweat. You know, running down the butt crack of the wrestler who's fighting you. You don't need to see that. It's best if you just make the game good, you know, that kind of thing.
That seems, I mean, the problem is, obviously, I had a friend of mine on here who's like a gaming journalist. And we speak all the time.
Yeah.
And he's more in his retro gaming these days as well. But he was like, you know, the problem is these big companies, a AAA game costs a lot to make.
Yeah.
Like a lot. People don't seem to understand how much these big AAA games cost. So they want safe money.
Yeah.
They're not going to take a risk on something a little out there, a little bit different, a little bit artistic, a little bit strange. They're just going to make Call of Duty again. They're just going to make the sort of Assassin's Creed, Last of Us, that sort of open world, long form gameplay because they know they're going to get their money back from it.
Yeah.
They're not going to go, oh, let's go and spend money on this weird, quirky idea like they used to. Because if it fails, that's millions of dollars down the fucking sewer.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, I suppose a lot of the indie gaming stuff now has got really good homes on like the Switch.
Yeah.
You know, which is like, I mean, one of my big gaming platforms at the moment. I love the Switch. And it's like, you can get, you heard of a game called Super Hot?
Not off the top of my head, no.
It's really good. It's sort of a bullet timey, puzzly, minimal first person shooter. It's really quite good. But it's, I mean, it was a Steam favorite for a few years, and a lot of, you know, proper indie sort of, you know, in development sort of thing. And I mean, it recently came out about a year ago, it came out for the Switch.
Yeah.
And a lot of other games have followed it, you know, so you're getting a lot of like indie Steam games are coming out on the Switch.
Well, it's like Hades.
Oh yeah, yeah.
The game Hades, obviously, that won a shit ton of awards the other year when it finally dropped, but it'd been in beta testing for like 2-3 years, where people just had access to it and tested it until they got to the point where like, this is the final version.
Yeah.
Then they released that final version properly, and it won a shit ton of awards this year.
Yeah, I did buy it for the Switch and download it. It was like it's by the people who did Bastion,
Yeah, that
wasn't it?
see, I've got Bastion and I've got Transistor was the other one they
Yeah,
did, and
yeah,
they've done another. I think Pyre is the other one which I haven't played. Um, but you can, if you play Bastion and you play Transistor and then you play Hades, you can see the progression.
yeah.
But what I didn't realize is though the guys behind it, Supergiant, were actually some of the people from Infinity Ward that made the original Modern Warfare games.
Oh wow, it's a bit
So
of a leap.
yeah, I guess the thing is like Modern Warfare is such an absolute monster. Like Call of Duty Modern Warfare is such an absolute monster of a game. I mean, it was the game that got me into playing first person shooters
Yeah.
because I hated first person shooters before playing that game. Um, and when I can't remember what happened, but I remember there was some sort of falling out between Infinity Ward and whichever company publishes Call of Duty or something. And Andy was probably screaming at his fucking earphones now, telling me that I'm wrong. But I knew there was some sort of fallout with Infinity Ward. A few of them had left or something
Yeah.
because Modern Warfare 3 wasn't made by them, I don't think. 1 and 2
No,
were. And I think the third one was someone else.
I just I can't. The last one I played was probably, my God, I think it was Modern Warfare 2. Are we in the right ballpark there, or is that something
That
different?
would have, I think that's the last Infinity Ward one they
Yeah,
did. Because Treyarch used to do the ones in between. So you'd have like an Infinity Ward one, which was Modern Warfare, and then Treyarch did World at War.
yeah, and then Black Ops ones as well.
Yeah, Treyarch did the
Yeah,
Black Ops ones, and Infinity Ward were doing the other ones. But then when Infinity Ward disappeared or left for a period of time, I think they're back now.
yeah.
Um, it was after Modern Warfare 2. I don't know if it's to do with the controversy over Modern Warfare 2, because obviously there was a huge problem with one of the levels in that game.
Oh God, I remember that. Was that the one at the
It's the
airport?
it's the airport where you just
Yeah,
gun down
yeah, I
loads of
remember that.
innocent people, which is funny
Yeah.
because now Call of Duty has literally become like, please commit my war crimes simulator.
Yes.
The latest one's like all the Contra stuff with Reagan, and it's just like, yeah, go and commit Reagan's war crimes for fun.
Yeah, it's hard, isn't it? It's,
The thing is, like, you can't really complain too much because they're depicting certain things within history that happened.
yeah.
So it's that sort of thing is like, well, do you take that out because it's fundamentally morally wrong and not make the game at all, or do some fictional game, or do you include it, but then you have to include all the history around it?
Well, I think if you're going to do it, you need to do it warts and all. I
Yeah,
think is probably the only way of doing it. I mean, it's one of those difficult things because you kind of you hope that some kids are playing it and they're going, "Oh man, yeah, that's some
this is
heavy
fucked up.
stuff here." Yeah, I'm kind of wow, I'm learning that and stuff like that. But I just don't think so. I think there's more going to be like a bunch of kids, just skinny American kids, skinny pale American kids sitting there in their underpants, sort of get some kind of weird
I mean,
gratification from it.
it's like, it's very strange. I mean, I don't know, like, again, one of the things that I never really got into FPS. I got into them for them a couple of games, and I don't really play many first person shooters. I played Doom. I love Doom. I
Yeah.
think it's
Oh,
hilarious.
yeah.
You know, it's one of the. I mean, I know you had issues with Doom Eternal, but I love that game because it's
No,
absolutely so full on.
I got past that. That was that felt like at the time it felt like the worst first world problem I'd ever had in my entire life.
Yeah,
And afterwards I felt like a small child throwing his toys out the pram. Yeah, I'm past that now. It's a good game. I'm going on record for saying.
yeah.
Yeah,
I love Doom because it's so movement orientated. It's not
it
just
is.
duck behind a thing, take some pot shots, duck behind a thing, take some pot shots. It's like, if you don't know how to move in this game, you don't understand the movement options, you
Well,
are going to get murdered.
absolutely. Well, it does something that I think is brilliant when games do, and it's self-parodies itself. It's totally fully aware. It's
Oh yeah,
self-aware, and I really appreciate that when a game realizes that, you know, this is ridiculous. I mean, even I loved the whole in the first Doom with the whole Space Marine when he's like, shit, just wouldn't listen to the narrator at all,
yeah. Just
or the exposition, just wasn't even interested in that.
but it was I think it was, I was watching my friend stream the first DLC of Doom Eternal,
Yeah,
and he was like, clearly developers of this game know they're taking the piss now,
Yeah,
because there was one of them, the cyber demons, in a corridor, and he was
yeah,
just like, "Now you're just taking the piss out of me. You're just ripping the piss out of me because there's nowhere to move in a corridor, and I've got to face this fucking thing."
yeah. I
And,
think I know the bit you mean. I think it was the last bit I got stuck on, if I remember rightly.
and he was just like, we've kind of like, the developers just know, they know what they've done, and they're having a laugh with you now, and they're just be like, "Yeah,
Yeah,
we're just gonna fuck around now. We don't. The game's out. It's sold what it's sold, and here's some DLC, and we're just gonna mock you
yeah.
incessantly all the way through it."
It still looks. I mean, visually, I still think the new, particularly Doom Eternal, even on the Switch, looks
Mm.
phenomenal. You know, just
Yeah,
just really captures that. I'm a bit of a sucker for that kind of all we're in hell. It's all gothic, you know, like frozen gothic cathedrals, you know,
yeah,
melded into hot volcanic hells. Brilliant. It looks really cool.
yeah. I mean, Doom's always had a cool look about it, even when you think back
Yeah.
to like the original Doom, which is,
Oh yeah. Yeah,
you
absolutely.
know, as much as it doesn't look great by today's standards, at the time it was fucking mind blowing.
Well, I couldn't be around a friend's, and he brought. I'd never heard of Doom before, and it was big on the PC. We brought it on the PlayStation 1,
Yeah,
and that was when it had a bit more of a kind of a really kind of grungy gothy soundtrack. It sounded really good,
yeah.
and I can it blew my mind. You know, it was like when I got a demo tape for my Commodore 64, and there was a triangle moving in 3 dimensions. And I sat there, you know, with my jaw hitting the floor, thinking, "My God, this is amazing!"
Yeah,
But yeah, no, yeah, I love Doom. Doom was awesome.
yeah. It's just, again, it's of its time. It's that
Yeah.
90s
Oh
era of
yeah.
everything being extreme. Mortal Kombat had come out,
Yeah.
you
Chris
know.
Morris was on the TV.
Yeah,
It was all going down. Yeah, absolutely.
it's just, yeah. And again, it's the comics were trying to be more extreme. Image Comics launched, and their whole thing was, we're going to be more extreme.
Yeah. There's a lot of media from the 90s. I think now you wouldn't. I mean, like I mentioned Chris Morris, I'm a massive Chris Morris fan.
Yeah,
I think the man's a genius. I think his writing's a genius. His comedy is the only comedy that always stays with me. It's brilliant. And but yeah, recently I rewatched Brass Eye,
yeah,
and I thought there's no way that you could repeat this now. You just couldn't do it, and it's got nothing to do with it being gratuitous. It's just it really is close to the bloody bone.
yeah. And I'm not sure. I'm not sure if a network. I don't. I think general public. A lot of general public would still find it funny and get on with it. I just don't know if a network would commission it anymore.
I don't think they would because it sits funny with a lot of other comedy, but yeah, it doesn't sit well. I hate to say this because it sounds wrong, but it doesn't sit well with the very kind of PC culture. But then that makes me sound like I'm talking about Jim Davidson, where I'm actually talking about an incredibly articulate
Yeah,
comedy writer.
I think there's a misconstruction of like the PC culture in some ways. There are people that are genuinely what I would consider like, left thinking like myself, who
Yeah,
still understand humor.
yeah,
And then there are people that are almost, you know, they're PC for the wrong reasons. And I was having a discussion with a few friends about this the other day. They're the kind of people that, oh, it looks good if you look PC now, or look woke in inverted commas.
yeah.
So they puff their chest out and pretend everything's offensive. They don't really believe that. It's
No,
just because it gets people to think of them as better people for whatever reason. It gets them some sort of attention.
yeah,
There are genuine people that, are left leaning and are offended by things that should offend everyone.
yeah,
And then you
absolutely.
get the people that are more into it for like making the appearance of being leftist, and they're more
Yeah,
about culture war type stuff and things like that. And it's just like, not really
yeah.
into that kind of thing. So I think there are still people that would really love if you created a new version of Brass Eye now, or a modern kind of thing like that, that they would like it. I just don't know if a network would have the balls to take it and show it.
I suppose the closest thing was the Mash Report was probably the closest thing.
Yeah,
But has the Mash Report's been axed now, hasn't it?
I think so. Yeah.
For something it did.
Did you ever see the Chris Morris short film called My Wrongs?
No,
See if you can find that. That's
I
fucked
will.
up.
I'm
That's
I'm right.
absolutely fucked up.
I'm writing it down there. I was last thing
Um,
I saw of Chris Morris. I was watching Ian Lee's stand up on Netflix, like you
yeah.
said, stand up comedy, and it was I had no concept of when it was recorded, and I was absolutely loving it. But I thought, oh man, he's a bit too optimistic, isn't he? And then he started talking about. He said, "Oh, of course, we're never going to leave the European Union." I thought, oh shit, it was recorded about 4 years ago. No wonder he's not so jaded. But there's
Yeah.
a brilliant bit in there where he's talking to his psychologist about it. He feels he's a failed comedian. And at the end, the camera pans around and you realise the psychologist is Chris Morris, which I found ridiculously funny. What was that thing called again, chap? I'm going to just
It's
write
just
that
called
down.
My Wrongs.
Okay, I'll have a look at that.
It's essentially a guy walking his dog,
Sounds good.
and I can't remember why. I don't know if it's an hallucination or whether it's just him having a breakdown, but the dog starts talking to him.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's
See,
it.
you got me there. As
That
it features a talking dog.
and that's I'll leave it at that because what happens throughout the course of this 20-minute short film is insanity.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean,
You've sold that to me
it's very
completely.
much pure Chris Morris in its most distilled form. There's a reason it's probably never been shown on TV or anything. It's just
I mean, I'm hoping I can get it on Netflix. Not Netflix. What I'm saying, YouTube.
probably,
Far
yeah.
more discerning channel. Yeah, I should look that up, chap. Definitely.
But that was a lot of fun. I remember watching it at work one day, like, because obviously I worked for HMV at the point.
Yeah,
And every HMV you're working, there's a TV and a DVD player in the staff room because obviously people that work there love film, love music. So of course there's
yeah.
facilities for us to watch it in our own time. And someone put that on while I was having lunch, and I was just like, "What the fuck have you just shown me? Like I can't go back to work after watching that."
It's brilliant. Me and a friend of mine, we used to watch in between where in my old place where I used to work, we used to watch the Mighty Boosh in our lunch break.
Yeah,
That was
it's a very
that's
British
something that
comedy as well.
very British. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
kind of like I don't like the comparison, but I can see why people make it a sort of modernistic Monty Python.
Yeah, I mean, but see, Monty Python's a funny one for me because Monty Python has been in my periphery for most of my life because my mum and dad never really were into Monty Python. So I
Right.
never grew up with it. But my partner, she's massively into Monty Python. I mean, I've seen the films, but when it comes to the TV show and the general
Yeah, and the
Monty
skits like
Python,
the skits like the Spanish Inquisition and all that sort of stuff.
yeah. And I mean, we watched a documentary, like I think it was in 4 parts recently about Monty Python. And I really want to go and revisit it, to be honest. It was a lot cleverer than I think I initially
It's
thought.
very anarchic, very
Yeah,
anarchic.
yeah,
But I think again, I think back to this again. This goes back to kids' comics. Like you go and look at the Beano from the 70s, 80s.
yeah,
That's very anarchic as well. That's very like a lot of the shit that's in there. You just like all the villains are the good guys.
yeah.
Like Dennis the
We did,
Menace is a bully,
yeah.
and yet he's like the hero of the strip.
Yeah, that was very much of a thing of its time, wasn't it? As well, the 70s. It had a very 70s school vibe about it.
Yeah, the Bash Street Kids are all arseholes, but they're the heroes of that strip.
Yeah,
It's fucking that 70s 80s things was very much like it. Again, it's uh, very much the sort of disruptive was the sort of mentality. The
yeah,
disruptive kid was the hero of the thing.
yeah, definitely. I mean, it was always we always kind of had a very. I've always thought that in England we had a very good grip of humour. What wasn't necessarily always good, and was certainly a bit. But I mean, every culture had its kind of sort of a racist streak of humour
Yeah,
that wasn't very pleasant. But when we had some proper alternative sort of comedy going on, I mean, Pete and Dud and stuff like that, it was good stuff.
yeah. I just
Yeah,
think,
totally.
yeah, it's very, very odd way of looking at things, I guess, back then.
Yeah,
So getting back to some of the artwork stuff.
yeah, go for it.
So you didn't really pick up on comics that much.
No, no, they were always, again, they were sort of something that was in the background and my mates were really into
And
and
yet
stuff.
you ended up
But
doing a comic book art style.
yeah, yeah, it just, I think that see, comic book art is, or the way I sort of see very mainstream comic book art is, and what I wanted to do in a style was I wanted to do a style of artwork that was really to flat and simple colors, very matter of factly comic booky stuff.
Yeah.
And I used to think, well, if I can get that and that's my base, that is like my starting point, and that's the style of the artwork I do, then really you can do some really messed up shit.
Yeah.
But you'll always be able to keep the viewer there because you've used a very flat, basic style, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was more my pursuit of comic book start, and then I've started doing strip work. Got proper. That sounds wrong. I started stripping to make a bit of extra money. No, I kind of got to the point where I started doing like comic book strip work about 5 years ago, and I was totally out of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
Because I hadn't absorbed as many comics as I should. I was, and it was something I had no confidence in it. And saying, confidence is everything in art, or 80%. I had no confidence in doing this kind of sequential thing going on. But yeah, I was very lucky that I worked for a couple of people for my very first comic book strip stuff that basically I worked for this guy, I can't remember his name, Jim something. And he used to write for Marvel.
Yeah.
And I don't think wasn't a big famous comic book writer or anything, but he'd done work with Marvel. And he was doing this like one shot kind of Tales from the Crypt Twilight Zone thing.
Okay, yeah.
And he wanted to do it. His idea was he wanted to have like a 5-page story. And each issue was sort of very, very kind of a portmanteau style thing, so you have maybe 4 stories in one book. And he wanted to showcase other artists, and he wanted me to do this demo story for him. And it was like a bit of a werewolf, like a twist. There was a twist at the end, but it's a bit of a werewolf story.
Right.
And he wanted it in quite detailed artwork. And I can remember it was the first time I ever learned about how to charge, because we were struggling a little bit to pay some bills at the time, and it was a bit, and I was still working and stuff. Any extra money would have been awesome. And he said, "How much do you want to do this 5-page strip?" Yeah. So I said 180 quid. I kind of, and that in my head, that paid off a bill we had.
Yeah.
I thought that'll sort that bill. That'd be brilliant. That was a massive weight off that mind. And he went, "Yeah, that's about industry standard." He said, "I can do that. I can do that." He said, "Yeah, that's fine." He was talking per page.
Oh,
and we were at cross purposes. So, and it wasn't until halfway through the book I realised that he was paying me per page for that amount. And that is how much, because there's a lot of, I do get a lot of people message me on Instagram asking me how much I charge for stuff. And to be honest, I just really kind of set it as a relatively, because you don't really compete with anybody. People in the art world, particularly in illustration, people don't really talk to each other about how much they earn or how much they charge. And to me also, it's a bit, because if you get somebody coming to me and they haven't got a massive amount of money and they want a particular bit of art, I can fit around it.
Yeah.
But I do, it's, in order to get my base value, that was my starting point, that I did this. And this is how much he said we would, you charge a professional illustrator to do this work, in full color, full painted color. So that was my introduction to it. And then I worked with him a couple more times on more sequential stuff.
Yeah.
And I kind of got into it. I honestly don't know if it's any good or not. To be honest, I'm doing the main one I've been doing, which is an indie comic called Cover of Darkness.
Yeah.
Which I've been doing now for about 3 years.
You spoke to me about this today, didn't you? You told me the pages that you were working on.
Yeah.
I looked at your description. I was like, I don't even know what.
I know. To be honest, I just do the artwork. And I've because I've been working on it for the issues are 20 pages to 30 pages an issue.
Yeah.
And I used to pull off the whole issue in a month.
Wow.
So you're talking about, you really need to do 2 pages a day, and some of these pages can be quite intimate little scenes in a forest,
right? Yeah,
or with Lord of the Rings battle size stuff. It's mental, and doing that has really taught me a lot over each sort of page I've done. And I do it, and as I'm doing it, I'm even looking at it, this is madness, isn't making any sense. I'm doing it, and he likes it, but it's not. This is mad. And then he'll send me a PDF of the finished version, and when they've dropped the writer, they've got the letter, it's still the writing in, and you read it. Oh, that's not too. It's actually really good, and I do actually really like it. I mean, obviously, I'm going to promote a comic I illustrate, but I do actually like it. It does quite well. It's been all around the States. Because the guy I work for, is because it's an indie comic, but he does sell quite a lot.
Yeah.
And it's got a bit of a fan base to it. And I think in the end of this year, it's being picked up by a publisher. Nice. So I think it's going in bookshops and stuff like that. But it's basically Game of Thrones meets the Universal monsters with a twist.
When you get the script, I mean, how much of a script do you see before, like, you go and draw the pages? Do you know everything that's going on? Do they give you a full description, or do they say, here's the beats, you figure it out?
It's pretty much the Cover of Darkness is brilliant, absolutely brilliant. The way that he gives it to me in script. I mean, he works with another lady. There's 2 authors to it, and I get it. And it's like, it kind of looks like kind of panel 1, and then I'll give me a rough idea about what panel is dominant to a page or something, but it might be like panel 1 top left, so and so walks into the thing, and if there's anything they particularly want to emphasize, they'll tell me, and there's a dialogue. So I won't get a massive thing to wade through, but they give me just enough. And because I've been working with them, I've done so many issues and I know the characters back to front now.
Yeah,
I can let it flow a bit more. I mean, when I worked with them, I did a bit of work for Dan Fogler, for the Brooklyn Gladiator thing, and I did him a couple of covers, and then I did some sort of test comic strip work with him, and that was very totally different, and that really threw me, because because the way that he wrote and gave you a script was more like a film script, where you were more given a bit of carte blanche to do whatever you wanted to.
Yeah.
And yet it threw me a bit. So I didn't like change.
So you prefer full script?
I'm easy, to be honest, because the main, I mean, I haven't been picked up by some big Marvel or DC, so I don't know how that works, but I'm quite content working with a lot of indie comic people, getting off at Kickstarter and stuff like that. And none of these guys will present you a script in some kind of uniformed way.
No,
it's all going to be more that creative, and I'll work around it. If whatever need be, I'll work around what I need to do.
Because I don't know if it's still the case with Marvel, but they used to be like the artwork came first, and then the story was fitted around the artwork. That was known as the Marvel method, and I'm just like, as someone who writes and can't draw, I'd be like, where the fuck am I supposed to? What you do? Just let the artist go and draw whatever the fuck he wants, and then I've got to figure out what the story is supposed to be. Like, how the hell does that work?
It's a tricky one. I think you kind of read that. I think what helps is if you've done more than one issue of it, you kind of get to know the characters and what the. God, I sound really pretentious saying this, but what the motivation is for the characters. So you can start putting a bit more into the artwork.
Yeah.
And it gets to a point where I get quite excited when I get a script. It has gone a little bit insane. I mean, obviously, I mentioned shoot a couple of pages I was doing today, and it's gone a bit weird.
I mean, you just literally told me what was going to be on the page. No real context for it. It was just like, it's this, and this. And I was just like, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
good luck.
Yeah. When you have to face the line and say, okay, so, horde of, so, you look over the the beach, and you've got a horde of crabs, giant crabs and lobsters and squid coming out the sea at you, all being ridden by weird mermen coming at you. And then all of a sudden you've got this massive sandstorm and all these Valkyries on the back of hippogriffs and unicorns and stuff. Okay, I can do that. And then the cuts in this comic are really quick, and then it cuts to it's in the forest, and you've got like this samurai ninja doctor guy fighting these weird succubus women who've previously just tried to suck the life out. It's like a bit much, but.
And then the next cut is probably someone just smoking weed in the forest.
Pretty much, that has happened. Yeah, no, it has happened.
And it's just like, where did that come from?
No, but I do. It makes more sense when you step back and look at the whole thing as a whole.
Yeah,
I reckon.
But I think once you, like you're saying, once you get the PDF, the final PDF of the whole issue, and you can read through it and be like, okay, now it all kind of comes together and it makes sense.
Yeah, I kind of
like you're a good few issues into the series now as well. So
yeah, totally. I mean, I kind of think, or I'd like to think, that's probably the way that filmmakers or musicians sort of it comes together. It's like like somebody making a film, and you've got all these like edits and these actors walking around and music, and then you put it all together.
Yeah.
And you see that, suddenly it starts to make sense. It starts to flow.
I mean, definitely. I mean, from the creative process for the band sort of thing, it's more of a case of I will have an idea of what I want to say, not necessarily specifically lyrics, but I'll have an idea of what the theme I want to talk about is. I will speak to them guys, and then both Adam and Hannah, the two guitarists, have kind of they've recorded a bunch of riffs on their computers at home where they've just been noodling around on that.
Yeah.
And they've got it all saved. And they'll just be like, I think I've got something for that. And they'll pull that up. And then we'll take that and we'll work on it and then extrapolate from that the rest of the song.
Yeah.
And then they present it to me and then I realise that it's in some bullshit fucked up time signature. I'm just like, I don't know if I can write over that.
Yeah.
And we start again.
It's interesting, isn't it? Yeah. I think everybody's got their own unique way of approaching it. I think, and I think again, going back to, I mean, I've never been to art school or anything like that, so I've not been taught a particular way to create stuff.
You just do what's natural to you.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah, and it's it can be a weird and annoying process, particularly when you're running it as a business and you're paying taxes and. You've got to fit your actual personal life around it, and then you get a really weird idea at 12 o'clock at night. It can be a bit. Yeah.
I tend to find that as well. Like I'll do most of my best writing stuff at 2 a.m. I'll just be like, oh, I've got to write that down. So I just sort of roll out of the bed, flop over to the computer, and be like, just make a note of it. Even something that will just remind me of it when I'm conscious.
I do that. I do, but mainly because I'm getting old and my memory's buggered.
Yeah.
But I email myself at night constantly. I'm like, I will actually just seriously, I'm not joking. I'll do it when I'm walking around. I'll suddenly get this idea in my head. I know that I'll get distracted, by like, I don't know, a butterfly or something, and I'll forget about it. So I'll email myself the idea. And I'll wake up in the morning and I'll have all these emails. Say, the fuck is emailing me now? And I'll look at it and it'll be all these emails. I've nearly blocked myself before. It's ridiculous. I've got all these emails from myself and I'll sit and read them and they'll be batshit crazy because I've just written words down, which is insane. I got an email from myself the other day and it said, draw Star Wars ships like bits of fruit. What does that even mean?
Well, given your recent mashups of like you did the Marvel with the Hanna-Barbera stuff, didn't you?
Oh yeah.
So I'm assuming it means something like draw a Death Star, but out of a raspberry.
Yeah, that kind of thing. Yeah. Well, I did a thing recently where I was going to do a series of them, and I started drawing objects, everyday objects like power tools and stuff like that, but as Star Wars ships. And sort of sticking cockpits on them, but not deviating from the actual shape of what it was.
So it's
and it all came,
it flies.
Yeah, absolutely. And it all kind of came from a commission I did for this lady it was like picture of her friend as a Jedi, and then he was like a handyman, like a repairman and stuff like that. And he had a droid with him, but she wanted the droid. I thought it was a brilliant idea. She wanted the droid made out of all his favourite DIY equipment.
Okay,
so I kind of bodged this droid together and stuff. And I thought, yeah, that's actually quite a good idea. And I know that they got the idea for Slave One from the lights that were outside of one of the Industrial Light and Magic buildings. And so, yeah, I started doing that. And then I discovered another artist had already been doing it, but far better than I had.
It's always the way, though, isn't it?
Yeah, so I gently sort of stopped and slowly walked out and closed the door behind me.
But no, I mean, one of my favourite series you did was the sort of, I think you'd just been people watching and you just started to draw the people of the local town.
Oh, God, yeah. Yeah.
But very sort of Beano-ish, cartoonish sort of take on them sort of thing. And they were brilliant because it was just like, yes, because everyone's met them people somewhere in their local town centre or something like that. And I was like, this is fucking genius. And they were obviously your very quick sketches, but it works so well.
Well, I had to do those purely because I thought if I didn't, I'd probably go insane. I kept seeing people and I kept thinking, like, you're like a little, is that person for real? It's like they were a parody of themselves. You know, they were like a bit more I saw this old lady once, and she's wearing this coat. You know, those kind of weird waffle looking coats.
Yes.
A sort of puffy, like a
puffer jacket sort of thing.
Yeah, well, like enormous ribbed dildo with a furry bit on the top. And this lady looked like just a long, thin, pink ribbed dildo. with a furry bit on the top and a little old lady's head sticking out. And I kept looking at it, I thought, that's not right. You know, is everybody else seeing this? So I started sketching people I saw around. But no, what I wanted to do is I didn't want it to look like I was just drawing everybody as grotesques.
Yeah.
I wanted to do nice stuff as well.
Yeah.
Things that I'd seen or glimpsed walking around. And I walked past a little street near where I used to live. This was a year or so ago. And it was, there was a guy with these two little girls. And obviously it looked like he'd gone to collect them from his ex. And she was just stood at the door looking really disapprovingly at him. And he sort of grabbed one of the girls, thrown her up on her shoulder, and he was walking along and he was really happy and they were really happy. And it's just an interesting sort of thing. So I cartoon, and it was all these little things. And I thought, if you can capture the nice little bits and the horrible bits, but they look like they all fit together.
And because they're all from the same town. So they do all technically fit together.
They all are. Everybody is technically from Norwich.
Yeah.
In there, but I think they're interchangeable. Something I've walked around other places and I've seen very, very similar.
Oh, this is it. It's like I say, like, you know, there are small town centres and like little areas in London.
Yeah,
where it's like if I walk down East Ham High Street, it's just I'm seeing the same thing essentially as what you're drawing for Norwich.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean,
it's completely transplantable to other areas.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it sort of taps into me and my partner have always said that I'm destined to grow up to be a very, very cantankerous, grumpy old bastard when I get older. And I always moan about hating civilization or wanting to go and like live in a little cottage in the middle of Scotland with a load of dogs and a poncho and a massive beard. And then throw sticks at people if they try and post letters through my door and stuff like that.
Get off my lawn.
Exactly. I wouldn't have any lawn though. It'd literally be an island. But it's like I do quite like people, but I don't like to admit it.
Yeah.
It's just one of those horrible things. Yeah, which is why, I mean, that was like the other bit of body work, like my frontliners stuff. I managed to sort of tap into that. So when I initially was going to do stuff like that, I was going to do that in a very cartoony way.
Yeah.
But that literally was my standard comic book work.
That blew up unbelievably.
Yeah,
that original image, which obviously you've done many variations of it since, but the original image of just them facing down against coronavirus and giving it the finger, and that just went viral at such a rate. I was like, fucking hell. Like,
Yeah, that was a bit odd. I mean, the only other thing I ever experienced like that before, which didn't, was the Chris Hemsworth Deadpool one,
yeah,
which I did, where I literally I drew a picture of Deadpool holding a little Thor hammer. You know, I didn't think anything of it. The only thing I did was I did it because it was trending, and it was like Disney had just brought Fox,
yeah,
and then some Japanese guy I didn't even know, who followed me on Instagram, sent me a small video of him watching his massive TV in his apartment in Japan. And there's a picture of Chris Hemsworth and a picture of Ryan Reynolds and a picture of my artwork up on Japanese news. And he's shouting in Japanese. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on? And it was, but yeah, there's a lesson there, kids. And that is always tag yourself in your own work and stuff like that. Because
well, that was a problem for you for a while, wasn't it? Was like your artwork was being. I remember seeing your artwork, and this is before the more recent problems you'd had.
yeah,
But years ago, I remember your artwork would suddenly appear on another Facebook page or something else, and I'd be like, well, I know what that is. That's from this guy.
yeah.
And initially, sometimes it would just be someone had done a Google search, be like, oh, this is really cool, and genuinely didn't know who the artist was.
Yeah.
And that was fine. I'd be like, oh, that's this guy. Here's his page. But there was a point in time there where suddenly everyone was just like stealing your shit online.
I think it's an inevitability of putting anything on the internet, of like people reposting imagery, because it's people are going to do that. Like I've always said, if you want a picture of a dragon, you type in dragon into Google image search, you're going to get thousands of pictures of dragons. Some of them are amazing, some of them are shite. You'll have William Blake's painting there, and the next thing is you'll have like really fantastic Boris Vallejo fancy painting, and then some shitty painting. And to you, to the onlooker, they're not going to really be worried massively about who the artist is. They're just looking at the image. So it's kind of like an inevitability. So I've kind of come to terms with that now. Copywriting does help, particularly if you're going to, which is one thing I did with the Frontliners stuff. I did get it copyrighted. So that blew up like that. That was mental, because I just did the initial picture. I had no intentions of it going or doing anything, and I just drew it because I kind of got the impression that all this stuff was going down. And it was right at the start of the first lockdown. Yeah, and that you knew that you could see that when they were interviewing doctors and nurses, you could see that there was an apprehensive. Yeah, there was an apprehensive stutter in their demeanor. You could see that these. You think, bloody hell! It's like these people have been asked to like go over the top, so to speak. And it's like we're not really what are we doing to support them? What's going on? And I did that image, and it just I don't know what it just resonated with everybody globally. I mean, I still get fan mail, so to speak, from all over the world. People saying, "Oh, I found it. We've printed it out and put it up in our ICU, and we're doing this, we're doing that." And it's really given me, real proper, embarrassingly humbling messages. It's mental.
I remember some guy from Russia messaged you and asked if you could do it as a graffiti thing.
Yeah,
and he painted up like a massive mural in a wall in Russia somewhere.
Yeah, it was on a side of a hospital, and that was on some kind of Russian news thing, and it was. It's all a bit weird. No, it's. I mean, it went everywhere. It went. I mean, it was in loads of medical books, magazines. I just got loads of people basically asking for permission to put it up and stuff like that. It was.
And you did a bunch of variations on it eventually, didn't you? Because you started with just a nurse, then you added the doctor.
Well, I did a couple of variations because people asked, and I kind of felt people was starting to feel, I think because the image was global, you did get the odd person going, what about doctors? What about nurses? What about firefighters? Which I totally saw. But then I was approached for it to be a book, a book of work. And it was like a ridiculously tight deadline of like, do it. We're going to need an extra 60, 70 images in about a month. and I had a load of commissions I already had to do.
Yeah.
But I thought, yeah, okay, I can do that. So I started getting a lot of feedback from doctors and nurses and stuff all over the world about how they felt, and I would sort of ask them, quiz them on a few things, and that gave me a lot of inspiration for the pictures that I did. So yes, there's going to be I feel like I'm plugging a book, which is the weirdest thing ever, because there's going to be a second edition out, which is going to have a different name, which is all very confusing, and about another 30, 40 new images in there.
Oh, wow.
Because I was always pushing for it to be really cheap, the book to be really cheap and accessible. And I mean, the hardback one is like, it's printed, I don't know, it's printed in somewhere in Italy, and it's like really expensive-y stuff, and it's only 20 quid. But I wanted an even cheaper version so everybody could get hold of a copy, like paperback, like graphic novel style.
Yeah.
And yes, that's coming out imminently, I think. But like I said, it's had to have a different title, something to do with algorithms.
Okay. Wow.
That's as far as I know.
Because you've just gone into this whole NFS stuff, haven't you?
Oh God, yeah.
Which I don't understand what the fuck that even is.
I think that I'm almost I'm split down the middle with thinking that it's an incredibly interesting and organic way that something has happened to artwork, but the other side of me is thinking like this is the biggest cash in king in all his clothes bullshit that you've ever seen. And it's but I would not patronize you by trying to explain it. I don't 100% know it myself. One thing I can tell you is if anybody out there wants to really properly hardcore copyright your artwork, is to mint it on an which is to start a blockchain, a digital blockchain of it, because that's the ultimate copyright. As far as I know, I'm probably wrong. If anybody listens to this and they think I'm wrong, I probably am wrong. So that's my disclaimer. But yeah, all I know is people want to collect digital artwork. So, and the fungible side of things, I think, is if it's fungible, it's real, like it's tangible. It's, you can touch it, you can feel it. If it's non-fungible, it's something that exists digitally. It's non-touchable, and the transactions, the money that you use to purchase these things, is also intangible because it's like Bitcoin, Ethereum.
So,
yeah, it's currency that belongs to no jurisdiction, so to speak.
Yeah.
And for some reason, people have gone crazy in collecting and buying artwork for it. But I have learned. So I've talked to a couple of other fellow artists who have been doing it. One is very successful guy, works for Marvel, and he's been putting his stuff up on there, and he's been selling. Is
this someone you might have worked with on something?
Yes.
In the past?
Yes. Yeah.
I know who you mean.
And he's.
I was actually going to ask about that collaboration in a bit.
Yeah, he's making probably £16,000 a day on selling pieces. But then again, the other guy I know who's incredibly popular in Europe, he's hardly selling any. Yeah. And me and him did a collaboration recently to try and sell some stuff, and it's really hit and miss. Because I'm not joking. You go on some of these NFT sites, and you look at the artwork, and some of them is a photograph of a turd with a little flag stuck in the top, and its current bid is like 3 Ethereum, and 3 Ethereum works out probably at about £15,000. Okay. You're like, okay, and then you look and you see actually a decent piece of artwork that somebody's trying to get an auction going on there for a couple of £100. Nobody's bidding. So there's literally no pattern. There's no rhyme or reason. It literally is collecting something for collecting's sake. It's like the Brit art explosion all over again, but digitally. It's like Tracy Emin's bed. If Tracy Emin's bed was made of ones and zeros, right. If that makes sense. I've sold a couple of pieces for what I would consider reasonably ridiculous amounts of money for what they were. Yeah. But it's very hit miss. Also, the other warning is that if anybody is going out there and wants to do it, anybody who's listening to this who wants to do it, is a lot of the sites, it does cost to list the artwork up, and it's about £100. It's
Yeah.
usually about 50 quid to mint it and then 50 quid to list it. But there are sites coming up now that are free to do that. But the other side of things is it's not very ecologically sound as a thing to do. The reason for this is its carbon footprint, I do believe. And this is a big thing because I've had a lot of hate mail from people in this area, as a lot of other artists have, because of I'm not, and again, I don't really understand it. I suppose it's like one of those things where I shouldn't really be doing it if I don't understand it. It's like putting your finger in an electric socket when you're a kid. I don't know. But if somebody says, if you put your finger in that electric socket, I'll give you $2,000. You're like, well, all right then.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's one of those situations. Yeah, that's all I can tell you, which is just a stream of gibberish. That's all I know.
So you're exploring it as you're doing it, essentially.
I'm exploring exactly that. I'm exploring it as I'm doing it. I've also started some really pretentiously bad animation in my work, which I've been messing around with recently. And just really the artwork I've been putting up is a bit ostentatiously embarrassing. like big gold skulls with loads of dollar signs coming out of them and stuff like that. So
So
you got
yeah, go on.
No, you said what you were going to say, champ.
I was going to ask another question, but yeah, carry on with your thought.
I was just going to say you kind of feel that you want to kind of create artwork that shows the obscenity of it anyway, if that makes sense. I think it's one of those things where nobody who enjoys art, I don't think, is going to be buying them. I think it's more people, decent people who buy them because they support artwork or they want to support that artist. I think that is one of your decent things. But I think the majority of people who are buying them are people who basically are investing in cryptocurrency.
Right, and they're seeing this as a way of...
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And also, if you had any kind of brain, you'd work out that it's probably the greatest way of money laundering, I'm guessing, because of the way money's going. But I don't know.
That was the big fear with a lot of them sort of digital currencies like Bitcoin, is that like major criminal organizations or whatever could quite easily launder their money through it. And because there's no like central bank involved in any of it,
yeah,
there's nowhere to really trace it to.
No, I mean, I think this is the way it's. I mean, I think the bottom will fall out of it. I mean, like with anything, if anything becomes ridiculously popular, people will put walls around it and try and own it.
Yeah.
And you'll end up with lots of little pockets of people owning their own little worlds to do with it. And it'll suffocate it and kill it. Whether that's a good thing or not, I do not know. I mean, a lot of people are spurred on by the idea that individuals such as Banksy and stuff like that can stick a piece of art up on there and sell it for like 6 to 60 million. But yeah, I mean, I put up my initial Frontliners artwork, the very first piece I did.
Yeah.
And I did eventually sell it to a really nice guy who got in touch with me, not for a massive amount of money. But so he could own the rights to it. He was quite stoked about it. But it's got nothing to do with whether the artwork's been viral or not. It's a bit weird. Incidentally, though, my publisher is planning on. We are looking into and planning on putting the whole book up.
Okay.
As an NFT, which will be the first ever complete art book.
Oh, nice.
It's going to go. I think they're planning on putting quite an obscene amount of money as a start for the auction.
Yeah.
But what we're trying to do is our initial. The whole idea of it is we want to give at least 30% back to the NHS, but we want to sort of focus on aftercare for NHS workers' mental well-being after all of this. Yeah. Because I personally think where I am, mental health isn't really in a great state in Norfolk, I don't think.
Right.
And it's, I think I just always get the impression that it can be an afterthought with things. So that's what we're going to try and do anyway with that as an NFT. So
yeah, that'd be a good thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
So just talking about some collaboration stuff there.
Yeah.
You've done the two that I remember were Boss Logic.
Yep.
And I think his name's Zon Dyer.
Oh, Zion Dyer, yeah,
Yeah, they're the
yeah.
two collaborations I remember distinctly. How did they come about? Was that just
Uh,
you'd be chatting back and forth and
yeah, yeah. It's
pretty much
I always had this idea that when my artwork sort of, well, the Zion Dyer guy. I mean, I love his artwork. I think his artwork's awesome, and
it's mad. It's absolutely
yeah,
insane.
and I thought it would be a lovely idea if we. He does a lot of kind of very organic alien stuff. I do a lot of very organic demonic stuff. I thought, what if we could face those two things off? What would it look like? So I got in touch with him. We did it a lot when we did a nice bit of work. That was really good. But I I've always loved the idea of collaboration, because my idea is I think it's a brilliant way for other artists who maybe haven't got the level of followers that you've got
Yeah,
on a social platform, or because that makes a massive difference to the amount of work you get and the amount of exposure you get,
yeah,
that you can sort of help them out if that's possible. Because I would have loved somebody to have helped me out like that if I could.
yeah,
And Boss Logic was that he got in touch with him. He's a big fan of my artwork.
yeah,
And the first collaboration I ever did with him, he suggested it. It was a thing for Infinity War.
yeah. That's the one I remember. Yeah,
Yeah, and it didn't gel. The work, what he was doing and what I was doing didn't gel together very well. And then the next time we collaborated, I made a suggestion to him, and what I wanted to do was a thing called the Skull Project,
yeah,
where it was just a face on skull, split down the middle. One artist does one half, one artist does the other half, based on a theme. But the idea was that you would try and pair it up with an artist who had, say, quite a large following on that platform, and an artist who didn't.
yeah,
So you created a bit of a kind of a community thing, and we did that, and that did kind of go off on one a bit. But I kind of did it with Boss Logic first, and we put it out there, and then loads of other artists started doing it with each other, and
yeah.
I don't know what happened to it, but spiraled off somewhere. So yeah, yeah, and I love doing the collaboration thing. It's really cool. I've got a few more in the pipeline
Nice.
that I want to do. This is once I stop procrastinating. Like,
That was today's Facebook post. It was like, I am the king procrastinator.
I
I
was,
should have won an award for this.
I got up at 8:30 this morning. Obviously, the first thing I was trying to do for most this morning was try and book myself a vaccine, a
Yeah,
COVID vaccine was the first thing. But yeah, a cup of coffee, get on with my work. I spent 2 hours this morning, 2 solid hours playing with the Dalek, and that was supposed to be solid working time. I was faffing around with the Dalek. I don't know what I did after that. I think I was pissing about in the kitchen making a sandwich, and then I don't know what I was doing. All I know is I wasn't doing any bloody work. So yeah, I was massive procrastinator today.
Is that because of the description of stuff you gave me and you was just like, I don't know where to start this?
It probably was. Well, I kind of have started, but it's sometimes you could get, and I don't ever think, I think anything, you can draw anything's possible, but it was just this moment of intimidation I had
Yeah,
of drawing. And I think it's because I've been working on this particular issue, in issue 9 of Cover of Darkness, for what has to be an embarrassingly long amount of time, because it wasn't an imperative to get it out, because obviously the chap makes most of his revenue to pay me as the illustrator and to pay us from selling copies at conventions.
yeah,
There hasn't been any conventions for over a year, so he hasn't had the revenue to do revenue to pay me for it, but not the revenue to get it out there. So there hasn't been an imperative to do it. And with everything, with me, if I leave something too long, the momentum can run out of it, and I have to like give it another run up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also it's me just being lazy. Too many excuses going on here, I think. Yeah. It's just me being a bit lazy, I think. And I've felt, to be honest, I have, since, it's a weird one, but since I did the Frontliners book thing, I have felt really kind of strangely burnt out.
But yeah, the thing is, like, and we've had this conversation a couple of times, is like, because you will do like a series of something and you'll be quite intensely involved in that series for like quite a while. You'll normally do like you did a whole batch of MCU stuff, and I think it's like a good solid 6 months of
Yeah,
every day sort of something will come out from you. I can
yeah.
see why you get burnt out because you're constantly like bang, 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 churning out this stuff, and then it's like I need to take a break now. My brain just needs to take a break.
Yeah, it does. That's the difficult. I always find it. I mean, I've taken some growing up. You know, from a pretty very working classy background. Is I've taken some shit jobs in the past to pay the bills. You know, like
Yeah.
grafty factory work and that kind of stuff. And I've got this thing in me that if you don't, you know, you need when you get home at the end of the day from your work, you need to kind of feel you've done a day's work. But with my work, I don't. I mean, you know, unless you take my index finger into account, do you know what I mean? You have to. You never feel you've done a proper massive amount of days work, and it's like yeah, you can burn out, although you can't see it physically. Mentally,
Yeah.
my brain can feel quite fried sometimes, and it's big. It's a juggling thing because you've got your commissions to do, and then you've got to keep your social media fresh.
Yeah.
Because if you just stop producing work that entertains people on social media, then people just start falling off and not be interested. So you've got to get those ideas out as well and do your own work.
You've got to keep that social media thing current. So, for
Yeah.
example, at the moment there's a big load of like stuff for the Zack Snyder Justice League thing. So there's Justice League artwork everywhere.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing. I mean, you've got if you can. It's all about if you see the pulse of what is popular in the media, and you just hashtag it. You do it and you hashtag it. And you've got a lot of followers as well. It'll get a big reach with people. But the problem is, since the lockdown, obviously cinemas shut down and people aren't going to the cinema that much. And okay, they're sort of absorbing themselves into Netflix box sets and things like that. But there wasn't a lot of stuff you could pull out.
No, there wasn't a lot of big films to attach onto either.
No, I mean, like you said, the Justice League was probably the biggest one. Even then, I mean, that's a bit of a niche thing. So I think there are a lot of people out there who kind of didn't quite get it because it wasn't opening up to some big cinema release.
No.
And it was a film that had been out before. And I think it was very much a fan-only thing.
Yeah.
For people, you know.
It was people that genuinely wanted to see what the original idea was.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I'm not a side now. I loved it. I thought it really impressed me more than I thought it would.
Yeah, it's one of them things where, I mean, I went into it being like, well, obviously we had no idea how much of the original film was from Zack Snyder.
Yeah.
We had no idea at what point he left and Joss Whedon took over and all the rest of it. But I was still like, the core concept of this film is pretty shit.
Yeah.
So I don't know what you're going to, unless you've completely restructured the film, which they kind of have.
Yeah.
I don't really know what the fuck you're going to get out of this. But I think because I went in with low expectations, I enjoyed it more than I probably would have done if I'd have gone in with high expectations, definitely.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think my takeaway from it was that if I just took it for what it was, that Zack Snyder's Justice League was the only standalone version I'd seen.
Yeah,
I'd walk away saying that's good. I enjoyed it, but it just didn't. The ending was a bit weak, and you know, blah blah. You know, you pick at it and it would be okay. You wouldn't say it was like on the level of like Endgame or Infinity War, but it was good.
Yeah.
But literally, it really totally defined for me the concept of polishing a turd.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I always, when you approach those films, you're always like, you sit there and you get the same film, but you pick out the little, oh, that's new. Didn't see that before. That's new. That's new. But with this one, it was like I waited half an hour before I saw anything I hadn't seen before. You know, it was really, it felt a lot more epic.
Yeah, totally. But it did also confirm for me that there's not many films that need to be that long.
No, I think, I mean, it was hard. I mean, I made a massive mistake on a Zack Snyder level as well. A while ago, where I sat down with my partner, I said to her that she hadn't seen Watchmen when we'd I think at that point we'd watched the TV series. I mean, I'd seen
Right. Okay.
I love watching. I love the film Watchmen, but we'd seen the TV series. And I said, "You should see this film. Zack Snyder's brilliant. It's brilliant." She said, "Yeah, well, we'll see the film." Yeah. So she went to rent it, and of course, I pestered her in renting the Ultimate Cut, which was like the one that was, I don't know. I
All the
think it was,
animation stuff's built back in from the
that's it. It
black.
had all the
Yeah.
animation. I think in total it was 22 hours long, and
Mm.
it's ridiculous. It was massive, and all the animation stuff in it was ridiculous. And she sat down and watched it. And I mean, although I really enjoyed it, I could see that as an entry level film, it's too much.
Yeah.
And I think I think Snyder's Justice League, same thing. It's just you sit somebody down cold who hasn't seen the first one and isn't invested in it, and it's a heavy go. I mean, at least it was split into chapters. So
Yeah.
if you felt you wanted to, you could approach in sort of
TV
chunks.
format. Yeah. You can
Yeah.
use like almost episodes. I mean, the only film that I've ever sat and watched is about 3.5 hours, 4 hours long, where I've really sort of just sunk into the film and enjoyed it, is the full version of Seven Samurai.
Yeah.
That's the only film where I've watched something for 3.5 to 4 hours and not felt like I've been sitting there for 3.5 to 4 hours.
I
watching
didn't
it.
even know there was an extended version of Seven. So it was a long
Yeah,
time ago since I saw
If
it.
you get the Criterion version, that they put out a few years back, it's
Yeah.
about 3.5 hours long. You have to change on the DVD version that I have. You had to change the disc in the middle.
Wow.
But it's incredible. And like I say, it just doesn't feel like 3.5, 4 hours long. You just sit there and you go through the story, and it's like, oh, this is really good. It's really fun.
Yeah.
Um,
The only thing I remember seeing when I was young was my mum really wanted me to see a film. It was more a documentary, but a very famous documentary film called Shoah, which was it was basically a series of interviews from the survivors of concentration camps.
Right.
And it's about 9 hours long.
Jesus.
And I watched it in 2 parts. And that was one of those things where it was so compelling, you couldn't,
Not
the way it
watch
was
it,
put
yeah.
together. You couldn't not watch it. It was brilliant. It was amazing. I mean, I think they use it. I think Steven Spielberg's really got it in some museum and enhanced it. It's one of those proper things where I think every generation needs to watch it.
Yeah.
To understand the mistakes that people have made in the past. It's a real powerful thing. But yeah, I mean, that's the only thing in my head that I've watched that was ridiculously long but felt so compelling that I couldn't stop watching it.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like, I see all these things about like, oh, the next Avengers film will be 3.5, 4 hours long. It's like, why don't they just worry about telling a good story?
Yeah.
The length of time is only important to tell the story. You need the amount of time you need to tell a good story. If it needs to be 3 hours, so be it. But if it needs to be an hour and a half, that's fine too.
I think it's become a trend now for having something that's really long. And ironically, I think it's the Marvel films that have kind of really done it.
It is.
And sort of pushed it forward. I mean, because I remember years ago, you had Tobe Hooper directed the Stephen King book, the film adaptation of Salem's Lot.
Yes.
That went on, was shown in, I think it was shown in 2 halves on the BBC. It's about 4 hours long. Brilliant. I mean, it's absolutely compelling. It's brilliant. And then they released it. They chopped it up to an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Because it was too long. So it has to be an hour and a half. And of course, you had characters coming into it. And then they went away and never saw them again.
And you had no idea what the fuck was going on.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it seems this, it's got to be short. It's got to be a short, sharp hit, of a film.
Yeah.
It seems to now be an overly long, they don't make cinema seats that comfortable.
Well, I guess the idea is that people were like, well, now I go to the cinema. Back when you went to see the cinema in the 80s, it was like £5 a ticket. Now it's like £12, 13. I mean, some of the places in London, £16, £17 a ticket.
Yeah.
You want to feel like people want to feel like they're getting £17, £18 worth of value out of that. And that's before you add all the cinema food and all the snacks and shit you're going to be eating while you're in there.
Yeah, I mean, it seems funny because, like you say, I mean, it's really emphasis should be on the quality of the film. I mean, if I went to the cinema and saw a half an hour film that was on a kind of an almost kind of Black Mirror level of writing,
Yeah.
I'll be more than happy than if it was like a 4 hour sort of superhero kind of beat 'em up. You know,
Yeah.
it's. I mean,
I think that the problem is that people associate quantity with value,
yeah,
and that's where the issue's coming now. It's like people are like, well, if I'm going to spend, I mean, I obviously a lot of the websites on Facebook and that, and the page on Facebook are American, and they're like, well, if I'm going to go to the cinema, it's going to cost me about $100 because
yeah,
by the time I get there with petrol, the time I've then bought the tickets, bought food, drink, and all the rest of it, it's cost me $100 for the day. So I want something that's worth $100.
yeah,
And if you spent that kind of money and you got an hour and a half film, unless that hour and a half is the Terminator or Alien or something of that ilk, you might walk away feeling a bit gutted.
yeah.
So now films, I mean, I remember, like you say, like a film never went beyond 90 minutes for the most part.
No,
If you got a film that was 2 hours long, like Star Wars, you were shocked.
yeah. Also, I mean, also it does a good film. Sounds a bit of a cliche, but I think a really good film, if it's 3 hours long, it won't feel like 3 hours.
No.
I think it probably for a really good 4 hour film will feel like 4 hours. But I think 3 hours, you can. I mean, I think it wasn't Endgame that was about 3 hours.
Endgame's 3 hours and it felt all of it.
Yeah,
The problem with Endgame is it's just not as good as Infinity War.
I've seen it a few times recently, and I really like it. I think it's quite a clever film because it manages to be 4 different film genres all in one film.
Yeah.
Which I quite like. It starts off as this incredibly retrospective, depressing,
We fucked up moment.
Yeah, this is it. We lost. There's no two ways about it. We lost.
Yeah.
And then it compounds it by teleporting it 5 years into the future. And then the next thing you've got like it's like a time travel movie, and then it's like a heist movie, and then it's like an enormous battle, kind of Lord of the Rings, battle for your soul kind of movie.
Yeah,
it was quite good. Now, it does have some lovely bits. I mean, I think I watched it not too long ago actually again, and it does have an added poignancy now where you got Chadwick Boseman coming out of the Doctor, and because he's the first person who comes out and he's got that look on his face.
Yeah,
it does. I mean, I don't care who you are, but it stings a little bit. It gets to you a bit.
I think
because of that.
I think Endgame is more powerful now because of what they've done in the storyline of Winter Soldier and Falcon and Winter Soldier.
Yeah.
Because obviously now you're talking about the people that have come back after the 5 years.
Yeah.
And they're all displaced.
Yeah, that was something I thought was very clever. When the Sam guy, the Falcon, that when he goes in and he's trying to get a bank loan, and they're like saying, well, you haven't deposited any money in 5 years. And he's like, well, I haven't been here. I didn't exist for 5 years.
Yeah.
I actually really like that. I think the only trouble is superhero films always got that difficult line between how realistic do we go?
Yes.
To how fantastical do we go? I mean, do we go to the realistic level of something? I'm going to guess probably the most realistic one you'd probably say was Nolan's Batman trilogy, probably. So that was a very grounded Batman, wasn't it? Very kind of everything was...
I've always said this about that trilogy. Batman Begins is, for me, the perfect Batman film. It is gritty, it is realistic, but it leaves just enough of a chance for the fantastic. If you kept it at the level that Batman Begins was, you could have still fitted Killer Croc and Clayface and the sort of odd characters like that into that.
Yeah.
It was when they got to the Dark Knight and they went super realistic.
Yeah.
The chances of them more oddball characters disappeared.
Yeah. In hindsight, I quite like that because it, again, going back to that multiverse thing, it kind of gives you another version of Batman to look at. Because it almost feels like, instead of arguing which is your favorite Batman, it's more like sort of which is your favorite multiverse Batman, which is your favorite, because I mean, I love the Dark Knight trilogy. I think they're really good. I hated the Dark Knight Rises
Yeah, I'm not a
when I
fan.
first saw it,
I'm still not a
then
fan.
when I kind of got it, I realised that the film was one enormous metaphor for Batman as opposed to a film, because it's pulled into the light. Everything about it is all to do with the light instead of the
Yeah,
darkness.
yeah,
And I'm a big fan of the Ben Affleck's Batman. I mean, I would love to see more of that. I like a big, older, grizzled Batman.
yeah. I mean, for me, what I haven't seen on screen properly yet is Batman at his peak. We always seem to be Batman at the beginning of his career or Batman at the end of his career.
Yeah,
You never see that sort of, he's been doing this for 10 years and he's
yeah,
like, he knows exactly what he's doing. He hasn't, because the problem is with Dark Knight Rises is that it's an 8-year gap, and then apparently he's like, body's completely falling apart and failing him.
yeah,
And it's like, which is the realistic thing? If you're looking at Nolan's universe about being realistic, if you're jumping off of rooftops every day for like 5 years straight or something,
yeah,
chances are your knees are going to give up.
yeah.
Your hips are going to give up because you're just taking a pounding every night.
See,
But
I think, I mean, what I'd like to see is, I mean, they keep releasing like, oh, there's Pennyworth, there's Gotham, all these different series. I'd love to see like just a proper Batman series that was quite dark, quite gritty, really, had a really good blend between Christopher Nolan's Batman, Ben Affleck's Batman, and we had like a 3 series, 3 seasons, and we had like almost like a year one-esque big Batman beginning of Batman,
yeah,
a middle Batman, and then the end Batman. And you just covered the 3 big
if
parts of his life.
if you was going to do that, I'd look at year one would be your go-to opener.
Yeah,
I don't know about an end one, but I think I'd probably go year one, the Long Halloween, and I mean you could do Dark Knight Returns for the end one, but I just don't really like Frank Miller's writing that much. I like year one.
I like the Dark Knight because I do think Batman does fit that kind of that kind of film noir aesthetic as well,
Yeah,
and that hard boiled kind of detective-y thing. That I think that worked for me in the Dark Knight.
yeah,
But yeah, I'd say something like Hush, maybe a slightly
yeah. You could do.
changed up version of Hush. Really might work.
I mean, the problem I have with Hush now is the fact that I've seen what they did with the animated version, and I'm just like,
Yeah,
how did you manage to fuck this up?
I mean, I need to watch more of those.
The animated ones.
Yeah, because I've seen a couple of them, and I mean, apart from that Killing Joke one, which I thought was a massively wasted opportunity.
Yeah, I didn't get that.
That start bit, Batman does not need to have an affair with Batgirl. That just
doesn't make any sense.
No, that really was that felt was, and you had when you got the Kevin Conroy kind of Mark Hamill combo as well,
Yeah,
of voice acting, which I think was best used in the Arkham games.
yeah,
Because you've got a really nasty Batman take on Batman and Joker in that, but yet you've kept the animated series. I thought that was genius.
yeah.
But yeah, you've got those guys. Now I thought it was quite underwhelming.
Yeah, well, that was the thing. Like Mark Hamill said, he'd come back for the Joker to if it was a Killing Joke, and then we
Yeah,
got that, and I was like, eh.
yeah,
I mean, if you want a really good animated Batman film, the one I recommend is Under the Red Hood.
yeah. I think I actually managed to find a copy of that. Started watching that a year ago, and I didn't.
That's really good.
Yeah,
because obviously it's the reintroduction of Jason Todd as the Red Hood.
yeah.
It's based on that comic when he came back, and he's kind of the villain in it.
I think one you want to avoid for your own sanity is Ninja Batman.
I've avoided that because I've heard that although it looks kind of flashy and fun, that it's actually really bad.
Yeah, it's like one of those. It literally is like it's like one of the, if I wrote a Batman story and wrote it down as an email to myself and then emailed it to me and then woke up in the morning and read it, I'd be like, what the fuck is this?
I think one that was a lot of fun actually was Batman versus the Turtles.
Yeah, now that does sound quite good. See, the Turtles, I love the Turtles, but you can't. the Turtles have got such a small kind of following of people who are really hardcore into it, and then everybody outside of that line, if you mention the Turtles, and you're looking at them, you can hear yourself talking to them, enthusiastic about the Eastman and Laird Turtles and how awesome they are, and you're going on about all the variations, and slowly, suddenly, your voice fades off into the background, and you're looking at them in the eyes, and all you can hear is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, like that.
Yeah.
Mental.
Because what they know is that 80s cartoon.
Yeah, absolutely. And then they think, why is he referring to an 80s cartoon while he's yeah.
Because I remember you did a sketch of the four of them recently, didn't you? You did some stuff, drawings of the four turtles fairly recently. And I was like, why not add the fifth one? And even you was just like, didn't even know there was a fifth one anymore.
Oh, you talking about the lady turtle?
Yeah, Jenica, who's now like a full-blown member of them.
Yeah. She was in that weird series they did.
No, that's different. There's a weird live-action TV show, which I can't remember what her name was. Venus de Milo.
Yeah.
They've got that. That's never been put into the comics, as far as I know. They've actually at issue, I think it was issue 98 or 99. There was basically a big, long-running story, and around the sort of late 90s into issue 100, a human girl gets turned, who's a member of one of the ninja groups, gets turned into the fifth turtle, and she's been a constant there now ever since.
Yeah.
And she's a really cool design character, sort of thing. But obviously, when it comes to your social media presence and you're putting out the turtles, like, there's no point putting out that one because no one's going to know what the fuck that is.
No. Well, I get that as well. I mean, it's like, obviously, coming from this country, if I do anything even remotely English, because I think my Instagram, I think over 85% of my followers are from the States, and most of those are kind of from the New York area. Right. And it's like, if I do a Doctor Who picture, it's like, what? You know, if I do like Bagpuss and the Clangers, I'm dead in the water. You know, because they have very little. That's why I was surprised I got such a huge reception for the whole kind of Avengers Hanna-Barbera crossover thing I did, because Hanna-Barbera is such a I mean, it's a thing for us in England, particularly if you're a child of the 70s, but in the States, it's like massive.
Yeah. Well, DC still put out Hanna-Barbera stuff.
Crikey, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Every so often they'll do like, I've got a bunch of them here somewhere from a couple of years back where it was like Wonder Woman and the Tasmanian Devil. You know,
that's like a team up nobody asked for, isn't it?
Batman and Bugs Bunny.
Yeah.
Shit like that, you know, they do that on a sort of semi-regular basis.
Yeah.
Because they own the rights to it, so
they might as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly that. You know, they own the rights to all that Hanna-Barbera stuff because it was all put out by Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
And so obviously Warner Brothers is DC's parent company.
Yeah.
So it makes sense for them to use them characters as and when they can.
I was wondering, which, you know, you've got the new Space Jam coming, and they threw the track. Sorry, chap, you don't.
I guess wasn't there some sort of issue with this?
The only issue with it was the Droogs from A Clockwork Orange apparently are seen in the background.
All right.
At one point, as somebody was pointing out, it's like, it's not Looney Tunes. It's the whole of Warner Brothers' properties.
Ah.
Now I kind of thought, well, surely you're going to throw a Batman in there or something as well. But I mean, you've got the whole DC universe to play with as well.
Because who's the basketball player this time?
I don't know.
It's obviously not going to be Jordan. And
no, it's who is it?
Unless it made it before he died.
LeBron James.
Because
yeah.
I don't know, but yeah, I know it's coming. But wasn't there something with Pepe Le Pew, and they've removed him from the film?
Yeah, Pepe Le Pew is quite literally the animated version of Kevin Spacey.
Yeah,
I think, at
Because
the moment.
they said it was like too much of a celebration of kind of what they called rape culture.
Yeah,
I know, like we're not putting him in there because like it's very like of its time. We don't need to go back there anymore.
it's a it's a really, really kind of weird. We live in weird times where they remove Pepe Le Pew because of the rape culture, but they put the Droogs from A Clockwork Orange,
Yeah,
like ringside at a basketball match. You know,
there's a
that's
mashup
slightly
for you.
surreal.
You should do the old Warner Brothers cartoons as the Droogs.
Well, I'm doing another series soon of something to do with cartoons and stuff. And what I wanted to do was I wanted to take cartoon characters, but really quite dark movie anti-heroes. So, but really kind of obscure film noir ones. I'm talking about things like doing Goofy as Gene Hackman in The Conversation.
Yeah,
You know, that kind of thing. Just really, really dig deep in kind of film genres. I want to do, like, you know, Daffy Duck as Scarface.
yeah. I was trying to think. I can't remember the character's name. Jack Nicholson in the Chinatown.
Yeah, who could be why am I thinking of Speedy Gonzales? That's just weird.
Elmer
But
Fudd as
yeah,
the Punisher.
yes, yeah, that kind of thing. Because I mean, obviously, I thrive on those kind of weird mashups.
Yeah,
It's crazy.
they're just fun. They're just
I've
fun.
got to go now, Chav. I've got to sort of wind it down. Is that all right?
Yeah, go for it, man.
If we do that, if you want to continue this, we could do this again and that tomorrow evening if you want, if you're free. But
I'm not free tomorrow. What we'll do is we'll wrap this episode up, and then I'll come back to you because I'm going to start going back through some people going forward anyway. So we'll come back around
brilliant.
to you in in a little while's time.
Yeah, that'd be good. It was good talking to you, chap.
Yeah, definitely, man.
Yeah, awesome.
Okay, guys. So we're going to leave it there. Thanks to MJ for coming on today, and we'll speak to you all soon. Take care.